it's Drybear. I've been diving into the guts of the First Descendant, all of the base stats, all of the data that comes from the game, and I've compiled together a list of all the best weapons in the game. Now, this is going to be more of a wider discussion that I'll break out into multiple videos because there's going to be a lot of conditionals and other things to consider when it comes to DPS. But I wanted to start today by showing you the 5 best weapons based on raw DPS in each of the weapon categories. So if you prefer scout rifles, SMGs, assault rifles, it doesn't matter, you can figure out which ones are the best, and I'll explain what the numbers you're seeing on screen are. Now, apologies for the flashbang, but I actually have a full published web document that has all of my findings and my data. I'm going to continue to do additional calculations and figure out more about the weapons. There's going to be a lot more that goes into this, and there's a lot more complications around reload time, how that affects DPS, whether or not you're in the effective range, things like that, and also all the ultimate weapons having their own unique passives that can have additional moments or conditional like niche cases where their DPS can spike a lot, and that will go into the calculation as well. So if you want to get the raw data, I'll leave the link to that down below. This is published online for anyone to access. Today's video is sponsored by HelloFresh. And honestly, if you haven't used a meal service like HelloFresh before, you need to, because they've gotten so incredibly good. I've always been someone who likes to cook for himself and prep and do meal prep, and HelloFresh fits into that perfectly. How it works is it allows you to set a menu and a delivery schedule. You can choose how often you want meals to show up, and you can pick from a large menu of meals to have them arrive at your door. And you can even specify how long you want to spend preparing these meals. All of these are pre-packaged and pre-sized, so all the servings are set up for you. You just have to follow the instructions and put it all together and cook it, heat it up, and you're ready to go. By the way, they provide these ingredients from farms, fresh and straight to you. There's no middleman. They're not storing it somewhere in a grocery store, and so it ends up being a lot more environment friendly. But on the meals themselves, it tells you how long it takes to prep. So if you're a very busy person and you want to have less time, or maybe you don't care, you can actually see how long it takes. Since I've been using HelloFresh, I've actually ended up using some of their recipes in my own cooking, or even just giving myself inspiration and ideas on what I want to cook next, because they give you the exact portions. You don't have to worry about getting the freshest ingredients. And regardless of what your meal requirements are, or if you have any food allergies or restrictions, you can easily pick through their giant menu on what you would like to have delivered and specify exactly what it is you're trying to eat. Plus, if you use my link in the description or down below in the comments, or use my code, you'll receive 10 free meals and free dessert for life. And there's actually a pretty large list of exciting desserts to have on here. I actually haven't had dessert delivered before until I just did this recent box, and boy, was it actually pleasant and awesome to have as part of my meal selection. And they have ready-made meals, kits, lunch specials, as well as soup you can bring along with you to the office or where you're heading to that day. There's even a breakfast selection as well. You can get some waffles or some bagels, or get some really easy pick-me-ups in the morning as you head out. All in all, I recommend at least trying it, because not only will it give you a better idea of what's out there, it might expand your horizons on what you're eating day to day and help you improve your diet or improve your health, or just inspire you to do new things, which is what life is all about. So again, check out the link down below, or use the code as well, and you'll unlock 10 free meals plus free dessert for life in all of your boxes. Now, it being a Drybear video, I had to put everything together to show you what's going on. And one thing that is a very useful tool when comparing different kinds of things is to set a benchmark and then compare against that benchmark. So these are the 5 best weapons based on raw DPS for all of the different categories. That doesn't include conditional passives, right? This doesn't include DPS from the explosion of Thunder Cage's AoE, or the different damage you're going to get from things like Fallen Hope if you have poison. This is just the weapon firing at an enemy and dealing its maximum damage, and the DPS that comes from that. And you can see that there are some blue weapons on this list. Recipient Unknown, by the way, is insanely good for a sniper rifle. The base stats on it are really, 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 really high. And weapons like the Vestigial Organ, the launcher, has some borderline unethical level of stats that make it incredibly strong. But this is how you compare these together. And then what I've done next to the name of the weapons is I've put a benchmark. So I've benchmarked the rest of the weapons as a percentage from the number 1 spot. So if the first weapon in the slot is 100%, that's now the benchmark. How much of that DPS are you going to get with the next down? And what this does, it tells you how far apart the rankings are. So in the case of Vestigial Organ, you can see that Guardian R4 is the second best launcher in the game, but it's only 67% of Vestigial Organ's DPS because there's that much of a difference. Versus like in the sniper rifle category, you can see that Piercing Light and Afterglow Sword, without their passive factors into it, are only slightly better than Recipient Unknown, the blue sniper rifle, on that as well. Now, of course, there's going to be conditionals around your character as well, based on the kind of damage it does. There's going to be a lot of things that we can calculate around modifying crit rate, modifying weak point damage, whether or not you're hitting the weak point, that sort of thing. But this is a global scaler that factors in their base crit rate, their base crit damage, their base weak point damage if dealing damage to a weak point, their fire rate, and how much ammo they have and how long it takes before they run out, and that gives you their total DPS for the output there. What I'll do in separate videos, because it's going to get a lot more in depth, is figure out, you know, if you modify these values, how can you make it better? So for example, some of these weapons might actually have a very, very, very low base crit rate, but excellent stats, which means that rather than adding firearm attack to those weapons, if you were to add crit rate or crit damage, you might actually get a significant increase in damage overall, because that is their weak point. That's their, you know, their fail case. That's where their critical path is for getting the most out of them. Some of these might just need faster reloads, because Vestigial Organ has a 4.2 second reload. Some of them might actually just need a bigger clip size so they can fire more in order to get out of it. So we'll probably break these out into separate videos to figure out how to maximize the value of each weapon, and then we'll probably have to do a video separately for the ultimate passives of these weapons as well. But there's a lot of standouts already. For example, the Perforator for hand cannon is easily the best hand cannon in the entire game. It also, by the way, has the highest base weak point damage scaler of any weapon in the entire game. All weapons except for Perforator scale between a 1 to 2x multiplier when you're hitting a weak point. So either one of the destructible items on an void intercept boss, or a headpiece, or one of those characters that has like a chest bubble or a belly bubble or something like that that counts as a weak point. The Perforator, for whatever reason, has 2.25 base. And on top of that, if you were to add weak point percent increase, most of the percent increase stats that you can add through modules or buffs are a percent scaler, which means it's scaling the base value that you have on the weapon. So when you put weak point percent on Perforator, you can get crazy amounts of bonus damage if you're hitting a weak point. Next, just to confirm, the cheese build that's going around with Glay, the infinite ammo Vestigial Organ build, Vestigial Organ is just honestly quite unethical with the amount of damage it does. It does have one of the longest, if not the longest, reload in the entire game. The time to empty is quite slow, but if you can get the buff for Glay that makes it so you can just unload all of the ammo at once, it's incredibly strong. I also put out a video yesterday going over how you can convert ammo into other ammo, which is super useful. So you'll be able to conquer that using this, and then you can have that buff with Glay for Vestigial Organ. But even if you don't have Glay, Vestigial Organ is still the best, highest scaling launcher in the entire game. For machine guns, the Tamer is easily the best, and that's not including Albion Cavalry or Enduring Legacy's legendary passives, which might put some up, especially once you get to an advancement level that's quite high. If you formo those weapons to 3, 4, or higher, you might actually get way higher than the Tamer, but the Tamer is a great weapon to pick up and use as a machine gun. Now, it still has one of the slowest time to empties in the game, which means it takes a long time to empty the Tamer, and it also takes a long time to reload it, which in effective DPS over a long period of time, the machine guns lose out a little bit to some of the more effective weapons, but you're also reloading a lot less, and that can play into your playstyle as well. Thundercage and Python are both very good, and they're probably just kind of in that different spot. Python for single target, Thundercage for AoE. If you include the AoE from Thundercage, especially if you format it to level it up, is going to be your great clearing weapon, and Python is excellent for DPS output as well, which means you're going to be able to use Python for that single target boss damage or burning down elites, and you can use Thundercage for the AoE and clearing, especially if you're not playing a character like Valby or Bunny or someone that has very large AoE. You can use Thundercage to slot that in, and a lot of people are building Thundercage as their farming weapon. For shotguns, I think shotguns in general are actually incredibly slept on. Now, they do require the high power purple ammo, which does require a little bit more setup and planning in order to use properly, but Subconsciousness is insanely strong in base stats. It is by far, stat-wise, the best shotgun in the entire game. You can also run a ultimate module that allows you to auto-reload shotgun shotguns when you put them away. So you can quick swap to the shotgun, dump the ammo, run this module on the shotgun, swap away, and when you come back to the shotgun, it's fully reloaded, which gives you a nice big burst. So if you get a stagger on an enemy like Void Intercept Colossi and they kneel, switch to the shotgun, pump that core really, really hard, switch back to your ranged weapon, step back, and start shooting the weak points again. And that gives you a nice, big, efficient usage of damage output. And you can also run mods on the shotgun that allows you to convert extra ammo types into the high power rounds, so you can keep it steadily flowing as you're collecting ammo from the mobs that are running around the arena. For assault rifles, Eternal Willpower by far is the best. And in fact, if you're not running poison as a trigger for Fallen Hope, there is no other assault rifle that comes close to Eternal Willpower as a weapon. So if you're trying to get good, reasonable weapons and just get proficiency and level them up using the catalyst on them, Eternal Willpower is a great target for this. Eternal Willpower, Tamer, Vestigial Organ, all of these are excellent pickups. You can even do Immediate Execution, Subconsciousness, and possibly even Recipient Unknown and Red Eye for blue weapons that are just very good scaling weapons that aren't ultimate level and don't require as much crafting as the others. That would give you a nice big boost in power. But we know Fallen Hope has these poison trigger and has some nice AoE capability, so if you can start leveling that up and getting better and better stats on it, you can actually have it eventually outpower Eternal Willpower. But right out of the gate, especially if you're fresh into entering into like hard mode, or if you're still doing the story, I would recommend just using this list to pick up the best purples or blues that you have and use those, and you'll be amazed by how much damage you get out of them. As it stands right now, beam rifles, tactical rifles, and scout rifles are in a strange spot. In most cases, based on the modifiers you use, the modules you use, and how you set yourself up, you're going to get a good amount of damage from assault rifles, hand cannons, machine guns, launchers, and submachine guns. The beam rifles in general kind of fall behind, but I'm guessing there's going to be more modifiers for them in the future that might make them even better. But as it stands right now for base stats, it is the only category on this list where a blue weapon outshines every other weapon in the game. Now keep in mind, Kingsguard Lance, the ultimate beam rifle, is an AoE weapon. You can spawn a Zeus shield and then cause it to trigger pulses. So you would expect that the AoE potential weapons to be lower on single target DPS on this list because they have more capabilities than just the target you're shooting. But Moon Fragment and Burning 44 are both excellent beam weapons if you want to use them. And I know people, the reason I included all categories because I know people have different preferences and weapons that they like using. For scout rifles, you can't go wrong with the Wave of Light, and you can see that number 2 isn't even close to it. The Wave of Light is insanely strong and is one of the few scout rifles that is worth investing into, especially if you want to use that kind of ammo type, which is super cool. Sniper rifles, on the other hand, are also insanely slept on right now. Their ability to scale with weak point is out of this world, and I think that for Void Intercept battles, I would like to see more people running snipers and hand cannons to deal damage to weak points, especially some of the bosses like Executioner or Hanged Man, where they have a small weak point that needs to die in a short period of time, or even Dead Bride has the same thing. You have a weak point that you need to destroy in order to trigger a phase change. Having weapons like Perforator, Piercing Light, Afterglow Sword, or even Recipient Unknown can make a big difference because you can pinpoint that weak point, blow it up fast with high damage burst, and then switch back to pure DPS weapons if you want to. Then lastly, for tactical rifles, again, a little bit behind some of the other weapon types, but Greg's Reverse Fate is insanely good as a base weapon, and with its passive, it gets even better. So if you're going to use a tactical rifle, I would recommend either using like Red Eye or Young Nobles, or just going straight for Greg's Reverse Fate and leveling that up, just because there is a big disparity in there. Anytime a ultimate weapon is higher than other weapons without its passive included, just goes to show how strong it actually is. And that's what I got today. I wanted to start with this video and go into more depth in other videos, figuring out some other conditionals, looking at the ultimates when compared together, and also how stats affect these, because different stats will make these move up and down relative to each other, because there might be some weird weaknesses on the weapons, like maybe they have too long of a reload time, maybe they don't have enough crit rate, but they have good crit damage, so if you add enough crit rate through modules, maybe they shoot up in DPS, those sorts of conditions. So I wanted to leave that for another video, so this video is just kind of like the best weapons to pick based on what you're investing in, what you're farming, and also what you can just pick up off the ground and use right away because it's just that good. If there's other guides or other topics you want me to cover, drop those down below. If you found value in today's video, leave a like down below, leave a comment for the algorithm to help this video get seen by more people, and don't forget to check out my other channels for other content and other stuff and other things.